الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. First, welcome everybody to our first event of the Imam Ghazali series, Disciplining the Soul. This event is called Prophetic Mannerisms and Etiquette of Living. And we welcome you all with the universal Islamic greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum. For those of you who came to our last event, the Black History Month event, alhamdulillah, I'm sure you all enjoyed it. We've had positive feedback so far. You are encouraging feedback, so if you guys do have any ideas, if you do have any suggestions, please do pass it on. Alhamdulillah, we have had positive feedback from everyone who attended. They all loved it, especially the Sudanese style Nasheeds that we had at the end. And for those of you who missed it, we've managed to put a recording of it up on YouTube, so do check our channel out, Ihsan Society. If you type in Islam, A Journey Through Africa on YouTube, it should come up. As you're probably aware, we also do regular updates on Facebook, weekly reminders on Fridays, plus we just post updates regarding our events, so do subscribe and do keep an eye out for updates. And we've also opened up an Instagram account too, just for regular updates and some reminders. So do join, inshallah. The Imam al-Ghazali series. This is based on the work ihya, al-deen by Imam Ghazali. It translates to Revival of Religious Sciences. And not only does it look at the core aspects of Islam, it also looks at the deeper aspects of Islam, the spiritual aspects. And that's something that we really wanted to highlight as a society. Why? Because as a community we feel like there's a lack of spiritual development. We all try our best to maintain our outward piety, which is good, alhamdulillah, is good, it's something we should do. However, having said that, we also need to focus on our inner piety. And that is what really matters. Because the more, sometimes what happens, especially in today's society, the more we focus on outward piety, we tend to look down on others who are maybe not as practicing. And that sort of defeats the whole purpose of piety in the first place. The great shuyukh of the past, the great ulama, they used to say that you need to think of anyone who walks past you as better than you in one way or another. You need to think of yourself as the lowest of the lows in order to appreciate others and in order to not look down on them. And in the same way that we nourish our physical bodies with food, our souls, our spirits need to be nourished spiritually with piety, and with dhikr. And one reason why we chose Imam al-Ghazali in particular is because not only did he master the core sciences of Islam, he also mastered the spiritual aspect of Islam. And this is a very short YouTube clip about one story from Imam al-Ghazali's life, and I'm sure it will touch everyone as much as it touched me. So it just highlights and reiterates what I've just said. Inshallah.
And Imam al-Ghazali at that point realized that he had to set out on this journey. So he puts his family in a situation where they were taken care of. He had daughters, his only son died, Hamid. And his wife was taken care of. And he said he was going to go on Hajj. And he set out. And he spends 10 years of his life pretty much just traveling in the Muslim world and not telling people who he was and living in a total state of abasement. His livelihood was done by copying books out He used to copy books and sell them. And he actually became a janitor. He became a janitor at the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. So he used to sweep the mosque, and then he was given a room there, and he used the room as a khalwa, but literally nobody knew who he was. They were teaching his books in the mosque. And he actually mentioned, he came upon places where they were teaching his book. He was once in a madrasa, and one of the teachers was saying, well, like the great Sheikh Abu Hamid al-Ghazali said, and he said he had to leave because he feared the ujub coming into his heart. It's just really amazing person. And for 10 years, that's what he did. There's actually, at one point, there was a group of ulama sitting, and this man came up and he asked a question, and Imam al-Ghazali was literally sweeping nearby, and he heard this man ask this question, and none of the ulama could answer. So Imam al-Ghazali saw this man, and he was worried that he wasn't getting the guidance that he needed. So he went up to the man and he told him, the answer to your question is this. And the man looked at me, started laughing, and he said, all those ulama couldn't answer me, and you think I would believe you? You're just a janitor. And somebody from the thing called him over and he said, what are you going on about? And he said that the answer to the question was such and such. And all these men were amazed at that. And he said he had to leave. He left at that point again, because he just didn't want anybody to know who he was. And that was his state.
That was the great Imam Ghazali. That's the man, inshallah, that through this series we'll be learning many of his teachings, both related to the core sciences of Islam, but more importantly the spiritual sciences. And for that we've got a series of events I'm sure you are aware of. The last one is not part series. But today is Prophetic Mannerisms and Etiquette of Living. The next one, inshallah, we've booked it we've arranged it for the first week of December. We're just waiting confirmation from SU. Inshallah, that will go ahead, breaking the two desires. That's hunger and sexual desire. Then in January, February, inshallah, we're going to have one on patience and gratitude. And then the final one of the series is going to be death and the afterlife. And these are all chapters from the ihya. Is an encyclopedia, and we've just chosen aspects of it which we thought would relate most to our students and which you guys can benefit from the most. And the last one is just another event that we've got planned, inshallah, for March. It's a Women's Day event, just talking about the female figures in Islam and how they shape the religion, inshallah. So we're going to start the program today with recitation of the Qur'an, and for this we'd like to call up Brother Yasin. Yes, Brother Yasin.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم فالذين آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه أولئك هم المفلحون. قل يا أيها الناس إني رسول الله إليكم جميعا الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض لا إله إلا هو يحيي ويميت فآمنوا بالله ورسوله النبي الأمي الذي يؤمن بالله وكلماته واتبعوه لعلكم تهتدون. صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you very much for that beautiful recitation, Brother Yasin. We're now going to have a nasheed. You may have noticed, alhamdulillah, in all of our events we try to have a nasheed. The main reason behind this is that wherever there is dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is also dhikr of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's mandatory in a way. Wherever in the kalima where there is la ilaha illallah, the kalima is incomplete without Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In the adhan, where we have ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, we also have ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And most importantly, sending praises and salutations upon the Prophet ﷺ is actually a sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. In the Qur'an it says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي. So verily Allah and His angels send salutations upon the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This, I think, this is all. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. So for that, I'd like to call up Brother Asad, so inshallah, recite the Nasheed.
أنت نور الله فجرا جئت بعد العسر يسرا ربنا علاك قدرا يا إمام الأنبياء أنت في الوجدان حي أنت للعينين ضي أنت عند الحاضرين أنت هذا الوصفي يا حبيبي يا محمد يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك يرتوي بالحب قلبي حب غير رسل ربي من به يبصرت دربي يا شفيعي يا رسول الله أيها المختار فينا زادنا الحب حنينا جئتنا بالخير دينا يا ختام المرسلين يا حبيبي يا محمد يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب السلام عليك صلوات الله عليك.
Thank you very much for that beautiful Nasheed. Without taking any more of your time, I'd like to invite our guest speaker for today, Imam Shams Tameez. It was a very last minute change, and we wholeheartedly thank Imam Shams for taking the time out to speak at today's event. For those of you who are not sure, who are not aware, we initially planned the event to be done by Sheikh Rizwan Hussain. However, a couple of days ago, his brother was involved in a serious car accident and is in critical condition in hospital. And we'd like to take this moment to, just remember his brother in your du'as. Do make dua for him that he makes a quick recovery. And without further ado, Imam Shams Tameez. Switch to the laptop.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah, Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. It was a great introduction, beautiful recitation, lovely Nasheed, Allah yazikum khairan, inshallah. Again, thank you for having me, it was no problem at all. I am coming off the back of a very long day, and so if I collapse somewhere in this area, then don't mind me, inshallah. So I think, as I was saying to the brothers earlier, I think you picked an excellent series, and the reason why I said that, and I'll begin with this. Can you hear me at the back? Can you hear me? Because Imam al-Ghazali is one of those figures that he was such a polymath that from whichever angle you look at him, you could take benefit. So he was an extraordinary intellectual. He begins his education, he was an orphan, don't forget, because his father passed away when he was very young, and he's put straight into a madrasa. And so he grows up in a madrasa, he memorizes all of the primary texts of Islam, and then he grows up to become this fantastic scholar. Then he travels famously and spends 2 years with Imam al-Haramain, Imam al-Juwayni, who was one of the greatest academics of his time, one of the greatest scholars of his time. He was a great Shafi'i jurist, but also a great philosophical theologian, what's called a mutakallim, philosophical theology. And he spends 2 years and he masters philosophy. And he comes home, and famously he's on this journey, and he gets robbed. The caravan all gets robbed. And so he's got all of these books that he's collected over the last 2 years. And he says to the highway robber, look, just take everything else, but these are of no use to you. Because he had copied out all of the books. He had copied them all out so he could take them back home with him. And so the highway robber's like, well, what are they? And he says, look, they're just my books. And it's everything that I learned in the last 2 years. It's all of my knowledge. And so the highway robber makes a joke, and he says, so all I have to do to strip you of your knowledge is take away these pieces of paper. And so Imam Ghazali said, I realized at that point that that man was sent from God. And that was an important lesson for me. So when he got back home, he spent the next 1 year or 2 years memorizing all of those texts that he had acquired. So he was a phenomenal scholar, intellectually, academically, but probably why you're wanting to talk about him from what Sidi Osama was talking about is his spiritual journey, and the fact that he realizes his nafs, his ego is out of control, because you've got to remember, he's appointed as the senior lecturer of the Nizamiya University in Baghdad. So that's like you becoming, well, it's not, I don't want to make a comparison because history, you can't be, but let's say, hypothetically speaking, well, for example, it's like you becoming like a top professor of Cambridge University, or a top professor of something like Stanford, or Yale, or something which you know that they're intellectual, like, what's the other one? MIT, yeah, kids, yeah, of course, that's the one, right? And I'm at SOAS currently, so I'll throw in SOAS as well, unless I can get booed out the door. But, so imagine he's like this heavyweight scholar, thousands of students flocking from all over the world. They come to study with this man, and he realizes, and he says himself, I could hear the fire of hell calling out to me. Because I could hear it, despite being this great scholar. And as Sam was mentioning, because the outward is wonderful, and the Sharia is fundamental. But the Sharia swims in ihsan, isn't it? It swims in that beauty of longing and of love. I mean, the worship is a method of expressing one's love to God. That's why Allah gave us worship. Otherwise, Allah doesn't need us to smack our heads on the ground. Allah doesn't need us to go round and round the Kaaba 7 times. Allah doesn't need any of these things from us. But He wants to see, and He has given us opportunities to express that love. And that's what worship is. So having that mindset with worship is what it really means to be a good Muslim. So Imam Ghazali ends up, as you talked about, and Sheikh Hamza's video that you showed, on this 10-year journey in finding his self. Meaning finding his self and trying to grapple and learn to grapple, the art of grappling with his ego and his nafs until he masters his own self, and then he returns back to teach. I mean, don't forget, he returns back, he teaches, as we're talking about, his final book that he writes is a book in Islamic legal theory. He doesn't stop being a scholar, but he contextualizes what it means to be a scholar in the entire setup or the bigger picture for why Allah created us. And so that's important to understand with Imam Ghazali. He was not an academic. Perhaps I should mention this, or I'll give you an example. Studying, for example, philosophy or even theology at university, at Western University, and studying Aqidah with a scholar, there's the difference between the heaven and the earth, to borrow an early phrase translated poorly into English, right? Literally, the difference between the heavens and the earth. Because when you walk into an academic class regarding theology, for example, truth is not the objective of that discussion. It's a historical look at the arguments. Nobody's interested in truth. It's about the accumulation of information. That's true, isn't it? That's what that is. It's accumulating information. This is what they said, this is what they said, this is what they said. Whereas when you go to study, for example, the same subject, but from a scholar, they are teaching you that subject subjectively. And so we shouldn't be confused. And Imam Ghazali, yes, he was this great intellectual, nation in and of himself, but he was a Muslim scholar. Why I mention that? Because Imam Ghazali in his time argued against certain philosophical ideas that had crept into Muslim discourse, primarily Ibn Sina. And so they, based upon certain philosophical positions, began to compromise core tenets of Islam. So Imam Ghazali refuted them in his famous Tuhafat, right? There's an English translation available of that text called The Incoherence of the Philosophers. Now, I was sat with a professor once, and he was a Muslim, but his argument was that Ghazali stifled philosophical development in Islam. But the argument that they forget is that Ghazali was not a philosopher. He was a Muslim scholar. He was an alim. Do you see the difference? His occupation was not philosophy. He utilized whatever tools and methods he needed to in order to defend Islam. And that's very important in understanding Ghazali. That yes, Imam al-Ghazali was this intellectual scholar and he was this great academic, but that was not his primary care or concern. It was Allah. It was God. But he utilized all of these tools that God had given him in order to do exactly that. I hope that made sense what I just said. So we wanted to have a little look at the author, which I've kind of given in a nutshell. I don't want to take too much time away from that. Also a little bit about his book I was asked to talk about, and then specifically a little bit about chapter 20. So we'll do exactly that. So part 1, intro to the author of the text. So al-Ghazali, his name is Abu Hamid, that's his kunya, i.e. that's the father of Hamid, and his name was Muhammad, and his father's name was Muhammad, and his grandfather's name was Muhammad. Right? And he was al-Ghazali al-Tusi, which is a place which we'll talk about in a minute, al-Shafi'i, and he was primarily a jurist in the Shafi'i school. The man, so he was born in Tus, which is an ancient city in the Razavi Khorasan province in Iran. That province is still alive today, but Tus is not in that name. The way Babylon does not exist, but Baghdad still does. May Allah protect those lands from any more bloodshed and turmoil. The year of his birth is disputed over. So Ibn al-Jawzi mentions it to be 450 after Hijri, which is equivalent to between this period and the Common Era of 1058, 1059. So he became one of the most celebrated scholars of Islam, holding one of the highest academic seats at the Nizamiya University, which was academically unparalleled at that time. It really was one of the most fantastic institutions. You know, perhaps if you could get somebody to come in and talk about it, I'm happy to do it at some later stage, just to come and talk about the Nizamiya Institute itself and some of the stories and some of the people that studied there. I mean, the Ghazali's story himself, you know, of burning the midnight candle, as they say. I mean, the founder of the Nizamiya Institute would walk around at night to see if any students were up at night studying. And he said that he walked and he saw all the lights were off. And he said, I was going to close the college, the whole university down. And then I saw one light on. And that was the light of Imam Ghazali. And so because of Imam Ghazali, he said that there's still students that are worth keeping such a university open. And there's entire studies that you can research about the cost, the type of endowments. And there's a whole history for the Nizamiya University. It really was quite a splendid university. So you can research that yourself if you like. So then, as I mentioned or I alluded to earlier, he has a spiritual crisis in which he realizes that his ignorance of God, despite his being an erudite scholar of his age. And what actually happened is a bit of a karama, a type of miracle that appeared for him, which is that he was no longer able to speak. So he would go into the dars and he couldn't speak. And so he would go home. And so he went into a cry, he stopped eating, he was in seclusion. His wife would come in, he wouldn't talk to her, he wouldn't talk to anybody. She would just leave his food for him because he wouldn't talk to anybody. He went into a real state of depression, and it really affected him at the fact that he was this great scholar, but he was ignorant of God. So why was he learning? What was the purpose of his entire existence if he's missed the opportunity to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So, as you heard in the opening introduction by Sidi Osama, this leads him on a 10-year journey of spiritual wayfaring. Now look, in a nutshell, what does this mean, spiritual wayfaring? It sounds a little bit cliche, spiritual wayfaring. What did he do? I mean, it was a process of him just spending time with his Creator, away from creation. It was seclusion. And, you know, if you look at the narrations about the Prophet, peace be upon him, before he receives revelation, they say that ahabba Allahu khalwa, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him love seclusion. So he would go off for weeks and months into the Mount of Hira, and he would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without distraction. Hey, if that was a time when they had no phones, no laptops, no television, only these radioactive waves and electricity and all of that that's really affecting the psychology of the human being, right? We're probably more it's probably more appropriate for us to look for some opportunities of seclusion than anybody else. You know, may Allah give us tawfiq to find those avenues. They're not easy in the modern setup, not with our busy lifestyles. There's a good book that's recently come out by Imam Ghazali, which is translated by Abdul Aziz Sulaqa, called, it's something about seclusion. I don't know if you know it, you could send it out on your email list or something. But it's about seclusion and how important that is in modern times. And I don't mean secluding yourself as in becoming monks, where you just, don't like take a lesson from here perhaps to go home if you're married and say to the missus, alright, I'll see you in 10 years' time, I'm going to go traveling for a little while. I mean, you have to contextualize these things. But the point is that there should be an element, even if it was to spend, half an hour a day, where you could just spend something that, whatever it may be, something that you could do, with that intention of khalwa, of seclusion. So he goes on this journey to find himself, and you heard in that introduction. So now, a little bit about the text. In this 10-year journey, he writes this book. Now what's fabulous about this, by the way, is he writes it with and all of his knowledge was mustahdar, it was present in his mind. And this is the type of intellectual giant that he was. So this is, by the way, if there's any Arabs here or any students of Arabic that know Arabic, then this Darul Minhaj print is probably one of the best prints that you can get of the ihya. It's in 9 volumes. It's a great text. I was going to bring one of the volumes in for you, this particular volume, to show you as a prop, but I didn't because it has so much Qur'an in it, and I didn't really, and plus it's such a nice print that I didn't want to damage it in my bag. So this is a very, very, very good print for those of you that know Arabic. There are other prints, of course, but this is a very, very good one. So he writes the ihya, which is, as we talked about earlier, a revival of the religious sciences. Now what does that mean? What does that mean? What happened in his time was, he realized that his own story of being lost and ignorant of God, despite being a great scholar, was a shared story for the majority of scholars of his time. But he was unique in that he was able to see that, God guided him to that, and he was able to make such a big decision like leaving his post, which means his salary, and that must have been a large salary to be in the position that he was, to leave even his family for a while and to be able to make that journey. And so what he realized is, you know, I was very fortunate to spend a year with Sidi Abdul Hakim Murad in Cambridge. Many of you may know of him, right? And I remember I asked him a question about the Sharia, about the sacred law in Islam, because Islam is based upon laws. We have certain do's and don'ts. And I said, you know, how do you put this into this particular context? I was asking him a question. It was a bigger backstory, which I can't go into right now. And he said that the moment you divorce the sacred law from compassion, then it ceases to remain the Sharia. And I think for me, that's exactly what this story is telling us here. That you could have a lot of the do's and don'ts, but your version of Islam can be very ugly. You see the point? Whereas the beauty of an Islam is where you've got the Sharia, but it swims in that beauty. It's done for the right reason, it's done for God. So you can never have a shortcoming in the Sharia. You know, we should never downplay the role of the sacred law in Islam. But to do it with that reason for the love of God is an amazing thing. And we ask Allah that He allows us to achieve that understanding and to live and imbibe that in our lives. So he realizes this is the story for most of the scholars. And so he goes about writing this book, which we're going to talk about in a minute. We're going to break the structure of the book up, and I'm going to explain the structure of the book, etc. Right? Where he does that. And so you'll be interested to know that the first book, which is Kitab al-Ilm, the book of knowledge, the first people that he basically goes in on, to be frank, are the scholars. I mean, he goes in hard. Like, he really grips. He first talks about the fada'il al-ilm, the virtues of knowledge, the high reward in knowledge, and the righteous scholars. And then he says, ulama al-su, the evil scholars. And then he begins his attack. And there were scholars who agreed with him theologically, who agreed with him even in jurisprudence, who used to burn his books. Can you believe that? There were not people that didn't agree with him or thought that he was misguided. No, they recognized that he was a great scholar. They agreed with him even in creed, but they burnt his books. Why? Because they were too ashamed that the public read these books, and then they will see them for what they really are. Do you understand the point? And there's a famous story about that that's in one of the volumes, the last volume. It's in a story about that, and the Prophet comes into this man's dream, and al-Ghazali says, this is the man that tells people not to read my books, and then he's lashed, etc. This is a whole story. I mean, Allah knows best the authenticity, but the scholars have mentioned it. There were people that would burn his books because rather than accepting my own shortcomings, it's far easier for me to just pull you down. Because now we're at the same level, and I don't need to feel guilty about it. And this is a sad state. I would much rather meet God with my shortcomings and hope that He forgives me than try to adapt religion to fit my lifestyle. I would much rather go to God, humble with my shortcomings, and hope that He guides me than to try and change something that He wanted from me simply to please my lifestyle. And this is what Ghazali was basically arguing about, but not just in the outward, but in the spiritual inward. So it comprises of 40 chapters. The first 20 are concerned with the outward sciences, whilst the latter 20 are a systematic exposition of the inward sciences. And there's a beauty to his structure, which we'll talk about in a minute when we go through the structure. So he breaks this text up into 40. You know what I have with me? I was going to recommend it for you. It's in my last slide, but I'll show it to you now. Some of you may have seen this. I recommend it. This is Imam Ghazali. See, Imam Ghazali, he was a legend. I mean, Imam Ghazali basically, it's like he took care of all of us. He basically writes this amazing work, and then afterwards he kind of sits there and thinks, I don't think everyone's going to read it. So then he goes about and writes a summary of it. I mean, what an Imam, right? I mean, it's so beautiful what he did. It's just like, oh, right, okay, you know what, some of you will read it, but But I think there's going to be a lot of you that probably are going to say, oh, 9 volumes did you say? Yeah, is the football on? It's going to be far easier. I'll just, I'll read it. I'll just watch the film. Is there a film on it? And there is actually a film that they made on Ghazali's life, like a half documentary film. You can watch it. So he writes this Mukhtasar. And then here you had Marwan Khalaf who translated it. It's a very good translation. And so this is Mukhtasar Ihya al-Deen, a summary of the Ihya al-Deen by the Imam himself. So he left out the bits that he thought you could let out. And he kept in the jewels, that you need to have on your journey to God. And so it's got this translation. It's pretty expensive. And I know that we're all students in this room. And so, it's probably about 40 quid. But I guarantee you, it will bring immense blessing into your life. One of my friends, he's studying in Jordan. And he's a convert, a lovely brother. And he's always broke. He's just always poor. His clothes, he's just generally poor. He's a real student of knowledge, as they say. He left everything to go and study with his family, and he's got no money. But he's got this immense library in his house. And so I'm just like, how is someone so broke, able to have so many books? And he said, oh, my teacher said to me that whenever you're short on money, just buy a book, and it will bring blessings into your house. So as you can tell, I've been broke quite a lot. And so I'm always buying books to help out with that. He said once that he left the house to go get shopping, he had a certain amount of money, and he goes, and he went past the bookshop, and it just kind of dragged him in. And he said, and he found one of those texts that, it's hard to get hold of certain texts sometimes, and they come in one-off, and so he found this classic of text, and so he said, I just bought it, and then he had a little bit of money that he had left, and he bought what he could, and he came back, and so he goes, I said to my wife, I said, I couldn't get all of the groceries today, but look what I did find. Look what I did find. And so I was thinking she must be having a tough time. And he always makes dua for her because of what she's put up with him. Anyway, so he splits this book up into 4 parts. A quarter in Arabic is called a ruba'. So they have these 4 parts. And the first is called ruba' al-ibadat. This first quarter of the text deals with worship, outward worship. But he's so amazing that if you look at the chapter titles, right, he's not teaching you the fiqh of prayer. You could go to his works. He's written works in fiqh. You can learn that he's giving you the secrets of prayer, the inner dimension of prayer, because he's trying to make you. He's realized that you're praying, but he's also realized that. Because you've got to remember, this entire book, he's talking to his previous self. Because he wrote this on his journey. So he realized where he was going wrong and how he fixed it, and so he noted it down. This is why this text is so amazing. And so he's talking about, okay, you've got the outward prayer, but you don't have the inward prayer. So your body is facing the Qibla, but your heart is not facing the Qibla. So your body is facing the Kaaba, but your heart is not facing the Kaaba. And so the first quarter is to do with the ibadat, and we're going to go through all the chapters. So book 1 is the book of knowledge, where he deals with knowledge and also good knowledge, beneficial knowledge, and knowledge which is ghayru nafi', which is non-beneficial knowledge. So you could be a student of the Islamic sciences, and that knowledge is still not beneficial for you. Because that all depends upon the intention in which you studied it and the way in which you used it. Because you can use knowledge to teach people, but you could use knowledge to control people, for example. So it's how do you use that knowledge? So the book of knowledge. So he talks about all of these things in great detail. The foundations of belief. So after he makes you realize that you need to have knowledge, he then corrects your belief and makes sure that you are believing what you should be believing. That's number 2. Then he talks about the mysteries of tahara, purification. So we all go make wudu, right? When we're going to pray. But he talks about the mysteries and the asrar or the sara'ir that exist within that purification method or process. Then the mysteries of worship. Because you can only believe in God when you have knowledge, right? For example, if you don't have knowledge of God, then you can easily be misled. Because you may go and a pair of Nicky Campbell's Sunday morning or whatever it is, right? And is it Nicky Campbell? Is that his name? what's his name? It's Nicky Campbell, isn't it? Nicky Campbell? What's his name? What's the presenter Sunday Morning? Come on, man. You guys have ever seen Sunday Morning? It's like one of those shows where they talk about, it's like tabloid philosophy. That's what I call it. It's like really, it's like philosophy, but it's not really philosophy. It's just, they're just being really dumb about it. Like on one of them they were talking about why teaching your children about the hellfire is child abuse. Next you're going to say the naughty step is child abuse. Like seriously? Like come on. You know, like it was really silly. I think that was his name. Anyway, you know, they made a whole show. You got to remember, there's a whole show. Millions of pounds have probably been spent in the development of this show and the salaries, and they're talking about, could God create a rock that he couldn't lift? Like, are you serious? Like, you just wasted so much money on a question that doesn't even make sense. It's like saying, is green tasty? Like, if I asked you that, who's my volunteer? Who's my volunteer? Who's my volunteer? Anyone volunteer? You're younger than me, I know that for sure. Actually, I think probably. Is green tasty? Is Bayern Munich tasty? You wouldn't know. Why would you know? Think about it though. Could green be tasty? No, it can't. It's a category mistake. Right? It's a logical fallacy. It doesn't make sense. And likewise, if you believe that God is the creator, cause of time, space, and matter, and a rock is within time, space, and matter, then they're two different categories. You can't put them in the same category. Does that make sense? It's like saying, is the letter J tall? Like the letter J doesn't have a physical existence. We could write it, but J it's a letter. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Like, you can't take these two categories and bring them together. It doesn't make any sense. But there was a whole show and people are really confused. Oh my God. So is it like a rock that's bigger than God? It's a category mistake. You can't put God and a rock in the same conversation. But this is what traditional Islamic theologians, they used to dispel these type of shubuhat and doubts from the believers by teaching them creed. So this, what I just talked about, is a discussion within our classical works. But we don't study them. So we don't know. Because knowledge is the foundation for your belief. Can you see the structure of his book? Because when you have knowledge, you will know what you believe. When you know what you believe, nobody can misguide you. Now you can build on your worship, because if your belief is incorrect, your worship is really in vain, isn't it? Let's just be honest. You know, if you believe in that. If you hold a view that everybody is going to be okay, then that's fine. But if you hold a view that no, people that have a certain kind of belief will be okay, then if you take that belief, then surely somebody who is praying all night in tahajjud, but he believes in two gods, well, it's not going to be of any benefit to him in the traditional sense of what it means to believe in the one God. So he takes you on this journey, and then he goes on to the mysteries of worship, because he's saying, well, worship isn't going to help you if your creed is incorrect. Then the mysteries of zakat, almsgiving, mysteries of fasting, mysteries of pilgrimage, etiquettes of recitation of the Qur'an, invocations, supplications, dhikr, adhkar. And then he finishes the first Rabi', book 10, on the arrangement of litanies and the exposition of the night vigil. Awrad and qiyamul layl. Litanies are literally they are certain things the Prophet ﷺ told us to recite for certain benefits. Like for example, anybody ever, don't put your hands up, just think about it in your head. Otherwise I don't want to be having a counselling session after the lecture, right? Anybody ever suffered anxiety? Of course, in your life you would have suffered anxiety. Exam time, right? Everybody is suffering anxiety because of all the caffeine. Or depression. People go through depression. People go through all sorts of different types of depression. You know, people have post-traumatic stress. People have mental illnesses. These are normal, common things that exist amongst human beings. Albeit are still taboos amongst the Asian community, but they nevertheless do still exist. And they're normal. Did you ever wonder whether the Prophet ﷺ gave us specific remedies for those? Because he did. He gave us specific remedies for specific illnesses. Like for example, the Prophet ﷺ said that anybody that says La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, it is a dawa, it is a medicine min tis'a wa tis'in da. It is a medicine for 99 diseases. Wa aysaruha al-ham. And the lightest of which is depression. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the Prophet ﷺ gives you a specific remedy. He says, recite this, take this, 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the evening. For example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, would say, anyone that says Surah Tawbah, the last verse of Surah Tawbah, Hasbi Allahu, la ilaha illahu, alayhi tawakkaltu wa huwa rabbul arshil azim. 7 times in the morning, 7 marrat sabahan wa 7 marrat masa'an. 7 times in the morning, 7 times in the evening, that any dua that person makes, Allah will accept it. This is what I call easy money. Easy money. The Prophet ﷺ would say, anyone that says, Bismillah alladhi la yadurru ma'asmihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama' wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. 3 marrat fis sama', 3 marrat fil masa'. 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening, no calamity can befall that person. Of course you're going to be tested. But the point is that Allah will create within you the ability to be able to cope with those tests and tribulations. Hey, this is the prophetic inheritance. This is what he bequeathed his ummah so that they can sail through these murky waters of dunya. He gave us whatever we needed, all of the tools. The Prophet gave them to us, alayhi salatu wasalam. But unfortunately, often we don't know them. So these are litanies. And so you have specific imams. Like for example, let's say I'm not a mujtahid. As in I'm not able, I might know Arabic, I may have studied or something or not or whatever it may be, but I don't have the capacity to be able to deduce legal rulings directly from the Qur'an and Sunnah. That is a status of ijtihad, that's beyond the mufti. Even a mufti, that's not his rank. Ijtihad, I mean obviously now the sad thing is we're all being ijtihad, aren't we? It's just fatwa, haram. Right? It's very easy now and this is a problem. But ijtihad is this really high level of scholarly activity, right? Why did I mention that? Yes. So I may not be able to deduce or extrapolate directly from the Qur'an and Sunnah the method of prayer. So what would I do? I will follow an imam, for example. So I may opt to follow, for example, Abu Hanifa. Now I don't have to follow him in every single thing because the Prophet didn't tell me to do that. But I'm not really going to be greater than him, am I? So I'm just generally going to stay within his school. And this is what's happened in this ummah for generation after generation after generation, that we remain within one of the 4 main schools of Islamic law. Yes, we can borrow at times if we need. Again, it's not about confining somebody, but generally we will remain within one school. Or for the general masses, they will generally follow their local imams. This is what would happen, because they might not know. So they will go to their local imam and say, what's the fatwa for this? He may look at their situation and say, well actually, if I give it to him according to my school, this is not going to be good for him. But if I give it according to the school of Imam Shafi'i, I could save his marriage, for example. So they may well do that in order to help you in your life. Of course, that's why fiqh was there. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمْ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمْ الْعُسْرَ. Allah wants ease for you, He does not want difficulty for you. So, likewise, imams, they collated these litanies for us. So they said, the Prophet said, read this in the morning, in the evening. You're not going to read 500 books to be able to get all that information, but they did do that because they were scholars, and they will put them into little litanies. One famous one that I recommend people to read is that of Imam Nawawi. Many of you will have heard of Imam Nawawi? Heard of Imam Nawawi? So Imam Nawawi, he has a hizb, a famous hizb al-Nawawi. You can find it on the app, you can download it on the internet. Hizb al-Nawawi. It's a few pages. He just used the Bismillah. He just used the Bismillah. Allahu Akbar. Qulu ala nafsi wa ala dini. It's very easy. If you read it for a few weeks, you would memorize it. He told you to read that in the morning and the evening, and he just uses the Basmala, but he includes in there all of these little remedies that the Prophet ﷺ gave. Your vitamins, your spiritual vitamins, like taking multivitamins. This is like taking your spiritual multivitamins. Likewise, you have the rawatib. Famously, Imam al-Haddad compiled lots of these different rawatib that you could read. He has his famous Wird al-Latif, in which they just take from the Qur'an and Sunnah these things that will help you in your life. So he talks about that. So if you want more detailed information, he has that in that book. I think I'm spending a lot of time on this, so I'm going to try to... The second quota is norms of daily life, Rubul Adat, on the manners related to eating, marriage, acquisition and earning, kasb, working. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting, that's very interesting. The lawful and prohibited, kitab al-halal wal-haram, on the duties of brotherhood and ukhuwah. What does it mean to be somebody's brother? Or somebody's Facebook friend? Seclusion, as we talked about earlier. Travel, music and singing. Interesting if you want to know, Imam Ghazali's positions on that. And he will be taking that from the Shafi'i school. You can look at his. I hope this is interesting you to go and read this or something. I should have bought a few more copies. I could have sold them to you, right? I could have made some money before I left. On enjoining good and forbidding evil. And the book that we are going to be just introducing today, because we won't have time, is The Etiquette of Living in the Prophetic Mannerism. Now, I'm going to come back to this in one moment. So this is talking about the Prophet, right? Alayhi salatu wasalam. Keep that in mind. Now, after these 20 books are complete, he has dealt with all of the outward sciences. Are they not outward? Marriage, outward, isn't it? Brotherhood, seclusion, travel, singing, music, enjoining good, forbidding evil. All of that is to do with outward things that we do. Then he mentions right in the middle of the book the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. And then immediately in the latter half, so he's beginning book 21 now, the second half of the book, it's to do with muhlikat, things that will destroy you. Now the remaining two sections are to do with the inward. You following me? This is now to do with the inward. So the marvels of the heart, he first explains to you the heart. And you'd love that, like he talks about where the soul lives in the heart. And where the nafs, he goes into great detail. It's amazing, really fascinating. On disciplining the soul, one of your lectures is going to be on this. On breaking the two desires, again, one of the lectures is going to be on this. Defects of the tongue. Condemnation of ranka and envy. Condemnation of the world. This doesn't mean living in the world as if living in the world is bad, but hubb dunya, loving the world more than the Creator. Condemnation of miserliness and condemnation of the love of wealth. Condemnation of status and ostentation. Hubb al-jah wal manzila. Condemnation of pride and conceit. And condemnation of self-delusion. Now I love this. Why? Because he's taken you again on a journey. Which is that when you've completed all of the outward acts of Islam, you've got the outward, but you may still feel pretty dry on the inward. Like, well, I'm praying, but I haven't felt that, I haven't felt that connection with Allah. I pray, but I don't cry. I pray, but I don't long to meet Allah. I'm too busy and preoccupied, but I am doing the outward things. Look at the journey. He first explains to you how the heart works. And then he says to you, well, if you want to journey to God inwardly, well, you have to discipline your soul. Because as long as you are more important, then there's no space for Allah in your heart. Because you've not made any space for Him. It's still just about you. And about what you want. And about what you want. And what you like. And what you desire. Not about what Allah wants. What Allah wants from us. What Allah loves is about what I love. It's me. It's always about me. Everything's about me. So he says you need to discipline that soul. And the number one way he says is to break those two desires. Because they're the worst of desires. If you look in Ramadan, for Muslims, we fast, don't we? Morning and evening we fast. One of the wisdoms that we fast is because if you can learn to control hunger and you can learn to control sexual desire, then really nothing else after that should give you too much trouble. Because they are two of the strongest things to be able to tame. But if you can tame them in a way that Islam has allowed you, because Islam has allowed expression of both of those things, but Islam has also allowed them within the confinements of what God wanted. Then he says, the tongue. Because if your soul is refined, your tongue will reflect that. Because the tongue, they say, is ibaratul qalb. The tongue is an expression of what's in the heart. So he mentions the tongue. And then he says, now, you may have refined yourself, but you have to protect yourself from some of the most subtle diseases of the heart, which are those of ranka and envy. Because you may be on your journey and thinking, okay, I'm quite pious, I'm making thicker, I'm doing good, but then you see somebody else is doing that, and you're like, yo, that guy, I'm supposed to be like Mr. Holy, And where are you, Mr. Holy? It's like I was on the train when they had Uncle Christmas. Have you seen that? Uncle Christmas, right? Huh? No, not Santa Claus. This guy's wearing blue. He's Uncle Christmas. And I was like, Santa must be like, what? What do you mean, Uncle Christmas? There's some competition right here. This is not able, and this happens. This happens. And these are where God, because now, Shaitan, the devil, he can't trick you into drinking alcohol. You're past that, inshallah. He can't trick you. I mean, at the end of the day, we should always be humble before God. Allah yahdi man yasha wa yudillu man yasha. Allah guides whom He wants and He misguides whom He wants. This is why arrogance is one of the worst traits, because I could look at you and I could think, look at this scumbag. Look at this scumbag. Look at me, I pray 5 times a day, I don't drink, I have a beard and everything. Look at this guy, he is like, and Allah could teach me the blessing of faith by taking it away from me. Allah could teach me the blessing of practice by taking it away from me. And that's happened in the history of Islam. Again, I don't want to digress too much into that. So again, humility. So rancor and envy. Then condemnation of the world, which is your reason for falling into all of those things. Then miserliness and condemnation of love of wealth. Condemnation of status and ostentation. Because even you might have shuyukh, spiritual shuyukh. Isn't that supposed to be spiritually refined? And you may notice, and you shouldn't judge, but perhaps, wallahu a'lam, but there may exist within them this love for status. So you will hear things like, for example, there's a sheikh, famous sheikh. I always tell people to be very careful of claimants to spiritual knowledge. Be very careful. People exist that Allah has opened up many doors for them, but you should be very careful, when it comes to from whom you take that spiritual help, if you know what I mean. Someone's going to help you journey to God. Be very careful, because there are many charlatans and you don't want to be duped. So anyhow, you may have a sheikh who's there and he's got these students that come to him regularly and he kind of teaches them and helps them. And then one day one of them comes and says, I went to, the other sheikh? I went to his halaqah and they were there. And he's like, you what? You can't go there. You have to stay with me. See, mushkila. There's a problem here. Because why are you worried? Why are you insecure? Are you trying to get followers, or are you trying to help people to Allah? Because if you were trying to help them to Allah, you wouldn't really care. Because if they were finding God, as we were talking about earlier, if they were finding God over there, then why does it matter to you? You should be happy that people are finding God, if that is your role that God has given you. And then self-delusion, which is that, where you begin to think that you are doing the right thing, but really, you're sedated from the truth. Then the last quarter, the ways of salvation. This is munjiyat. Okay, so he told you the bad news. And then he says, well, let me help you. He doesn't say, let me help you. He says, let me show you what helped me. And so he says, number 1, repentance. Follow the journey, by the way. Look at the journey he's taking you on. The marvel of the ihya is in its structure. Then he says, on patience and thankfulness. Because once you make tawbah, do you think God's not going to test you? Be patient and be grateful that He allowed you to see your faults. On fear and hope, that don't get too comfortable, that God guided you and He accepted your tawbah, but remain fearful and hopeful. And if you want to be on this journey, then prepare for poverty and abstinence. Because this is not a journey of the weak. The journey of the soul is a journey of great struggle. And this is why you should be very careful whether you even want to embark on such a journey. I consider it a bit like, I don't know how it was, I don't know if you guys are from London or where you're from, right? But when I was in school, this is quite a long time ago now, right? We had lower tier, foundation, intermediate, higher tier, right? Alright? So I remember, if you went into foundation, you were like pretty much guaranteed to get a C. But you could never get anything more than that. But if you go for higher tier, right? You could get an A star, but if you fail, you will fail miserably. I don't know if I can use that comparison here, but I feel like it's a little bit like that. Like you could just get through life trying your best, and you'll probably get a mediocre grade at the end of it on the Day of Judgment. God out of His mercy perhaps will forgive you. Perhaps you won't. But if you want to be someone that is connected to Allah, you want to see the signs. You want God to open the skies and let you see things, so that He really cements faith in your heart. Well, that's like higher tier. If you make it, you will get an A star. But if you fail, then you could fail miserably. And so it's because once you, as Dr. Umar Farooq, those of you may have heard of him, he said something amazing and it just rattled my mind. He said, if you're going to make war with the nafs, with the ego and the devil, where you have to be prepared to go to war, like all-out war. You know, when people are at war, they forget about their homes, they forget about their houses, they got their armor on and out they are every day. Nothing becomes important, it becomes that battle. And so if you're willing to make that journey, you could receive the star, and you could be from the Siddiqeen, the people that are with the Anbiya al-Faradis, you know, in the Firdaus of Jannah. You can get there. But if you slip and you are duped by your own ego, then you can spend your entire life thinking you are okay, until you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you realize that all of that was in vain, because your ego was completely out of control, and you did not know that. So it's one of those difficult decisions that somebody has to make, but it really is one that we all have to make, otherwise we have the fear of not making it on the last day. May Allah protect us. Then faith, because once you go through those stages of poverty and abstinence, this doesn't always mean that you're going to be poor. It just means that you will be tested. Then faith in divine unity and trust in divine providence. That's when God will solidify your faith, because you would have seen things with your own eyes. And this will create that ultimate amount of love, longing, intimacy and contentment, where that is a nafs mutma'inna, as Allah describes in the Qur'an. A soul which is content with whatever Allah wants. That person's decree is in line with God's decree. Whatever God wants is what that person wants. And then on intention, sincerity and truth. Why he mentions truth? As-sidq. As-sidq literally means wholeheartedness. It means that there's no room in your heart for other than God. And that can only be achieved ultimately by going through this process and through the system. And then on holding vigilant self-examination, to preserve such a state, you have to remain vigilant of yourself and to be fully aware. Self-examination, introspection. And this is achieved through meditation, through seclusion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a meditative state. The salah is a meditation. And in the last book, which is, well, you basically journey on that until you die. Now that doesn't just mean a physical death. That means until your ego is dead. That is, remembering death and the afterlife is that when you're on this journey and you feel like, I can't cope with it anymore, and it's just too difficult. God's just, He's testing me and I don't know if I can bear those, even though you can. But it's at that time to remember the end goal, which is, if I could truly die in this world, then I will be with my Creator in this world before I leave. And so that's a metaphor of the remembrance of death and the afterlife. Of course, he talks about the realities of death, but it's to know that that journey, this will take you to the state, halul fila, to the state where you are entirely exterminated, and the only thing that remains in your life is Allah. Where you are utterly insignificant, but Allah is the only thing significant in your life. That, my dear brothers and sisters, is the ihya al-deen. And this is a story and a memoir of a salik who travelled that path, and then he wrote about his journey, and then he left it for us. And this is why, one of my the mashayikh would say, al-ihya shaykhun liman la shaykha lah. The ihya is a shaykh for the one that has no shaykh. Because he put his entire journey in that text. Now, what time are we finishing? What time do you want me to finish? Oh, okay, I'll finish before then, inshallah. I'll finish before then, inshallah. I don't think I'll take more than 10-15 minutes. Hopefully, inshallah. Oh, by the way, so can I take you back to something? So when we did these books, in the center of that book, what chapter does he put? The chapter we're dealing with today. Which one was it? Chapter 20. What was the name of it? You know what? Let it go. Let it go. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. As the Urdu speaking people say, Allah li marzi. I'm going to get to the end now so I can. Sorry. Now I regret putting these little things on there. Teaches me for trying to be overly clever with my PowerPoint or keynotes. So, why he puts the Prophet ﷺ in the middle? Because the Prophet is the culmination of both of those things, the outward and the inward. So right in the middle he puts the Prophet in his character. Because you get to see that in action. You get to see perfection in the outward and perfection in the inward. You know, in the chosen one, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this is why our mashayikh say that the Prophet is the center of this religion. Center of this religion. Because you will never know what it means to know God if you don't know that slave. Because he was the slave. He was the slave. Allah created him as that perfect slave. His ability to worship, his knowledge of God was perfected. So he was the perfect slave. And this is why the Prophet used to love calling himself al-abd, the slave. Because that's the greatest thing that you could be in this world, is a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, and the Prophet was that. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay, so let's just quickly brief over this. So chapter 20 on the etiquette of living and the ethics of prophethood, which is adab al-ma'isha. Ma'isha literally means from, asha literally means living. So ma'isha means, like in Urdu they say mu'ashara. It's actually, it's Arabic word, mu'ashara, which literally means society or. So these are the manners and adab. Adab, how would you translate adab? Anyone know how to translate it? Manners? Sorry? Anyone else? Manners is a very popular one. That's good. Anybody else? Adab? Adab is the plural in Arabic. Adab, adab. Like waqt, awqat. It's plural template. So adab, adab. What does adab mean? Sorry? You speak really lowly. Sorry? Respect. Okay, good. That's a so manners, respect, character, all of these things are considered adab. Ethics, they translate them as. But adab in Arabic literally means wisdom. And wisdom literally means wad'u shay fi makanihi, putting things in their proper places. That's wisdom. Like for example, again I'm going to go into a reference here. Arabs, any Arabs here? Arabs? No? Arabs? Okay. Arabs, mashallah. So you'll understand probably what I'm saying. Any Urdu speaking people here? Everybody else? Anybody who doesn't know either Urdu or Arabic? Okay, good. So I'm going to explain this. Right? The reason why is because I don't know what languages you speak. Text? Any text? Don't know text? Okay. Alright, I could have done that one, but I can't. I'm dead for everything else, right? So, I give you an example. If this, I don't really use it. There's Zayd here. Zayd is young. How old is Zayd? How old should we make him? Let's say he's 20 years old, right? So he's, goodness me, 10 years younger than me, right? So, Zayd is here, and he's younger than me. Now, in Arabic, I would say for him, anta, and anta, you, and anta Zayd, and anta Zayd, and you Zayd, and I can use the anta, which means you. But in Arabic, unlike English, the you has a plural, which is antum. So anta, you, antuma, you two, antum, all of you. Right? Like ka, assalamu alayka, ka is you, kuma is two of you, kum is all of you. Right? So, for the Arabs, when they wanted to show respect to somebody older, or I don't know, in whatever way it may be, they wouldn't really use the singular, they would say antum. Antum. In Urdu, we have a similar thing of tu and a, right? So we'd say, so Zayd would say tu, But if my dad was sat there, I wouldn't say that. Because even at his nice old age of 70, he'd still be able to, That's in camera. I did not suffer any child abuse. So, but I wouldn't say that to him, would I? I wouldn't dare say that. It wouldn't cross my mind. I would be looked at as so disrespectful. I would feel myself so disrespectful to my dad. I would say or tuso, because I speak Punjabi, right? So I would say tuso, for example, right? Or if I was speaking Urdu. I would never dare say tu. So wisdom or adab here for my dad is not the same for Zayd. So when we're looking at adab, we're looking at when to do it how to do it, and in what way is it appropriate to do it. This is what adab means. So here in this chapter, he's dealing with adab al-ma'isha, the ways, the wisdom in which you carry yourself as you live your life. And we learn that from our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. And akhlaq al-nubuwah, akhlaq from the word khuluq. In Arabic, the word khalq means my physical body, my khalq. My khuluq means my character, my inward. Khalq, outward, khuluq, inward. So we're dealing with akhlaq is the plural of khulq, or khuluq. So this is dealing with the character of prophecy, of prophet. Aywa? Again, I only put a very summarized version of this chapter in these slides. I urge you to read that, which will probably be similar to what's in these slides, but with more detail. And if you can, to buy this chapter. There should be most of the books of the ihya have been translated into English, so you can look them up, inshallah. Just type in Ghazali into Amazon books, and they will come up. And use your 10% discount that you get as students or whatever it is. So adab is wisdom, and wisdom is putting things in their proper places. Outward, so this is again in the ihya. I'm directly taking this from the ihya. So Imam Ghazali says, outward dhawahir adab are exponents of inward bawatin adab. So he says, if you see somebody with good manners on the outside, then that's a good idea that he has adab on the inside. But if you see someone who's bad mannered on the outside, then don't expect him to be no sage on the inside. Don't expect him to do that. So he says, although he could be a hypocrite, of course, and be lying, but he's saying that the dhawahir will represent the bawatin. The outward will represent the inward. The movements of the limbs are the fruits of thoughts. I love this. He says that harakatul jawarih, that the movements of your body are thamaratul khawatir, that they are coming from the way that you think. So he's attempting to get you to think about how you think, because that will affect what you do. Again, we're not going to go into this. I'm just giving you an overview. I came to talk to you about the overview of the chapter, not necessarily teaching the chapter. So actions are the result of character, akhlaq. Adab are the imbibing of knowledge. I love that. Because that's what it means to have knowledge. That it manifests in your character. Like for example, look, at the end of the day, I remember when I went to share a personal story with you. When I started Darul Uloom originally, one of the things that you struggle with at the beginning perhaps, is that you'll see older students, and when the teacher would come in, they would kiss his hands. And when you've kind of grown up in England, that could be a little bit tricky, because you don't really know who these people are yet. You just started off, and you'll see the students, and they all stand up. And he would, when the teachers would walk in, they would straighten their shoes, so that when they come out, they can just slip their shoes straight on. They would, and the teachers would want to, kick their hands away and stuff, but they would do it because he's teaching me knowledge, I'm learning my religion from him, etc. They would have all of these adab for their teacher. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm learning about adab, I'm learning about religion, but is it manifesting? And so I used to kiss my teacher's hands. And I remember the realization I had, somebody else gave me this realization. I said, I'm kissing all of my teacher's hands, and that's fantastic, but have I ever kissed my dad's hands? I thought, wow. It was like one of those, right hooks. And so I said, all right. This time when I got home, right, from Darul, I'm just going to go right in, and I'm going to kiss my dad's hands. And we've never done that in my family before. So I've got 4 older brothers, I'm the youngest, so you can imagine my dad's not used to this. And so I don't know what to expect, which way it's going to come from. I don't know whether he's going to include a knee in it. I'm really confused, but I thought, look, I have to do this, because why am I learning what I'm learning? If my learning cannot get me to at least show basic adab to my dad, then my learning is really useless. And that's what I felt. So I went home, as a train journey home, I psyched myself up, and it was no easy matter. It was no easy matter. The only thing I can say was equivalent to that was getting married. Apart from that, it was huge. It was a big ordeal. And so I went in, and so I greeted my mum. See, kissing your mum, her forehead, her hands is easy, isn't it? Mums is just so easy, right? And then I went for my dad. And my dad's, very proper. He doesn't talk a lot. He's very poised. And And you know my dad as well, and he said, you know what, we didn't talk a lot. And so, he kind of gave me a hug, and I just went in for it. And I kissed his hand, and he just got really freaked out and wanted and then he just thought, okay, I think he's on some spiritual quest or something. And he just kind of avoided it, and he just kind of got a bit shy, and so my dad just kind of walked up, sat down, newspaper, a cup of tea, that sort of thing, just to let me to it. And then, it was fine for the next week that I was at home, and then when I was leaving to go back to the room, as I left, I kissed his hands again. And it was just a little bit less awkward. Just a little bit. It was still awkward, but a little bit less. And then every time I'd come home, I'd do it and do it and do it until it became something for me. Wallahi, Allah is my witness. Inshallah, I'm only sharing this with you to show you, for me, a personal experience of where I realized that I'm learning about adab. I'm learning that the companions used to kiss the hands of the Prophet. They used to kiss his feet. As an adab al-Mufrad, Imam Bukhari lists the hadith where they would kiss his hands and his feet because he was the Prophet. And how when Halima Sa'adiyah, his foster mother, walked in, he stood up, and he took his shawl off and he put it down and he said, this is my mother. This is my mother. When he went to Abwa, to his mother's grave, because she died when he was 6 or thereabouts, that he wept at the great, like his adab that he had for people that deserve that adab. And so, for me, adab is imbibing knowledge. And this is what Imam Ghazali is saying, that if that knowledge isn't manifesting in adab, then it was really useless what you were learning. It was just an academic exercise. It has no real life or nothing, no bearings on real life experience. Okay, then the secrets of the heart are in cultivating good actions. And then the luminosity of those secrets, which appear on the outward, make the outward beautifully adorned. And I think any of you that have met righteous scholars or teachers or just righteous people, in general, pious people, haven't you met people like that? They might not even be, they might not even have knowledge, or they might not even be quote unquote so outwardly practicing, but they're really beautiful people. And sometimes this is the luminosity that comes and it beautifies their outward because of their spiritual states. Okay, the narration of Aisha, so our mother Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, so Sa'id ibn Hisham said that he visited Aisha, may God be pleased with her, and he questioned her regarding the manners of the Prophet, upon him be blessings and peace, to which she responded with a question, have you read the Qur'an? After he replied in the affirmative, she said, فَكَانَ الْقُرْآنِ فَكَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ, that the character of God's emissary was the Qur'an. So if you want to know what your Prophet was like, just read the Qur'an. So Imam Ghazali, he now lists a litany of Quranic verses related to noble character, but I do not list them here for trying to keep brevity. But if you want to look them up, again, buy the ihya, buy that mukhtasar, and he's listed them in the ihya, so you can go and have a look at those verses related to the character, which you can clearly see in the life of the Prophet. Now this is one hadith. Yeah, we will be finished inshallah in 10 minutes, right, by 1:15. And so this is one hadith which is an encompassing hadith, I call it, right, because it really puts everything into it. So we're going to have a quick read of it. I mean, it is pretty long, right? Should we have a read of it, or should we just, okay. So it is attributed to Mu'adh bin Jabal, may God be pleased with him, that the Prophet ﷺ said, God the Exalted honored Islam with the most bounteous manners, among which are good companionship, generous actions, gentle address, being soft in your speech, extending charity, spreading peace, visiting the sick, be he pious or a transgressor, joining in the funeral procession of a Muslim, good neighborliness to whomsoever you are a neighbor, be he Muslim or an unbeliever, respecting the grey-haired Muslim, i.e. elders, accepting the invitation to food, supplicating, forgiving, reconciliation, islah bayn al-Muslimin, and reconciling between believers, not stirring up things to make it worse, chivalry, futuwa, generosity, leniency, overlooking, i.e. to be overlooking, initiated greetings, i.e. first to give salam, containing anger and forgiving people. Whereas the radiance of one's Islam is lost by frivolity, falsehood, singing in all manners of playing instruments, every stringed instrument, involvement in anything that does not concern him, lying, backbiting, defamation, dissension, estrangement, bad manners, arrogance, pride, vanity, impudence, frolics, grossness, and indecency, bearing malice, envy, evil thoughts, injustice, aggression, and oppression. So really, that's one hadith that just gives it to you, doesn't it? You do those things, you don't do those things, you'll be great. And that is the inward akhlaq. So these are characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ that he gave us. So some specifics of the Prophet's character. So this is what Ghazali lists. So I just listed them. Number one, that it was described that he was just. Again, we're not putting references, hadith, because again, to save time, but they're all in the text if you want to go back. So just, wise, fair, forbearing, modest. His hand never touched the hand of an unlawful woman, who was unlawful for him. Charitable, not a dinar would stay in his house overnight. Can you believe that? You know, once he was praying. He was praying and he left his prayer and then came back. They said, what was that, Ya Rasulullah? And he said, I remembered I had some money in my house and I didn't want to pray with that in the back of my mind, so I went and gave that away in charity so I could pray with a clear conscience that I've not kept anything from the believers. You know, Imam Ali, the fourth Caliph of Islam, in Sunni Islam that is, the cousin of the Prophet Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu, karramallahu wajhahu al-kareem, he, when he was Caliph, the Baytul Mal, which was the the Muslim welfare state, like where all the money was kept, he would distribute it, then he would wash it himself, and then he would pray 2 rak'ah on it. And so they asked him, why do you do that? And he said, because I want this piece of land to testify on the Day of Judgment that I didn't keep any of the wealth of the Muslims from them. That I did not hoard it. That when the money came in, I distributed it straight out. And when I washed the ground, and then I prayed on it, so on the Day of Judgment, it could bear witness that I did that. You know, so in this way, they didn't used to hoard anything. At-tikathur, which is mentioned in the Qur'an. So, again, we could talk about his charity, and we know a lot of these things about the Prophet. Humble, fixed his own clothes and sandals, responded to children and slaves. I could talk about stories where the Prophet ﷺ would be walking and a little girl comes along and she grabs his hand and she starts skipping along, and the Prophet ﷺ was going this way, she takes him that way and he just starts walking with her. And she walks in the entire city until she walks off and then he carries on what he was doing. And he was, this is the Prophet ﷺ, he was extremely humble. You know, the Prophet was so humble. I mean, delegations would come in to meet him and they would say, where is your king? And him sat on the floor with everybody else, with patches in his clothes. I mean, he was something, the Prophet said, Bada Islam began as something strange, and it will return us that way. And that's tidings to the strangers, for those that can try to imitate the Prophet ﷺ in his states, not just in his outward. You see, it's really easy to imitate the Prophet in his outward, isn't it? I could go put a thobe on right now, lengthen my beard, and mashallah, jameel jiddan. He looks beautiful, mashallah. Like, come on, man. He looks beautiful, mashallah. Right? And I don't mess with him. His name's Osama, which means lion, right? So pouncing lion, he pounced on me. So, and that's beautiful, and that's important. And I cannot stress how important it is, but to follow the sunnah of the inward, goodness me, but it's doable. And we ask Allah that He facilitates that for us. I don't want to die missing out on the opportunity to have witnessed God in this world before I left. So we ask Allah for that ability to be able to live that inward state. Say Ameen. Okay, so the Imam Ghazali, that's a grammatical error. Because Imam Ghazali assumes that they're already there. Lays 6 kinds of descriptions of the Prophet in 6 separate sections. Number 1, his speech. He was the most fluent and eloquent of people. He was sweet in speech. He spoke with authority. He spoke comprehensively. The Prophet was and iqalla wa dalla. It was small and meaningful. That's how the Prophet spoke. He had jawami' al-kalim. He could say, like, innama al-a'malu bin-niyat. Have you ever read the commentaries in that hadith? The commentaries go on for pages. All he said was, innama al-a'malu bin-niyat. Actions are by intentions. The Prophet ﷺ was extremely comprehensive in his speech. He spoke slowly, and again, forgive me if I'm going to rush through this here. He spoke slowly and repeated himself sometimes 3 times to make sure that people understood what he said. His laughter. He smiled the most, alayhi salatu wasalam. And unfortunately, sometimes, not you guys, mashallah, you've been smiling at me since I kind of feel like you're laughing at me, but sometimes I think, as Muslims, we should really try to revive this sunnah particularly, because that's the first impression that you will ever leave with anybody. So he smiled the most. The companion said when he smiled, it was like light beamed from between his teeth, alayhi salatu wasalam. When he would laugh, he would never make a sound. He never laughed, qahatan. So he wouldn't laugh, ha 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 ha. He wouldn't laugh like that. His mouth would become so wide that you could see the back of his teeth, but he wouldn't actually make a sound. So his etiquettes with food, he would eat Egyptian cucumber. So anyone want to go to Egypt to go find some cucumber? Yeah, marhaba. It's sunnah with ripe dates and salt. So he liked ripe dates with salt. You know the Prophet, you know mazaj, you guys know mazaj, like hot foods, cold foods, etc. The Prophet was an expert at getting the balance. He was an expert. So if you look at, I recommend a book for you, is Kitab al-Tib, the book of medicine by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi, where he talks about this, and how the Prophet used to mix the right type of food. His favourite fruits were ripe dates, melon and grapes. He would eat grapes from the bunch and remove the stems from his mouth, so he would bite it off the bunch. And then he would remove the stem from his blessed mouth, and some of the juice was described as pearls on his blessed beard. So some of it would drip onto his bed, and the Sahaba said it was like pearls on his bed. Can you see how the Sahaba viewed him? Like everything about the Prophet was just beautiful, because he was the beloved, wasn't he? You know, when you love somebody that much, you know, everything they do was beautiful. And so he mostly ate dates and drank water, and sometimes that's all he ate. He would take dates with milk, calling them the two delicious ones. His favourite food was meat. And he didn't eat it a lot, but it was his favourite food. He would say it sharpens the mind. We're not talking about like beef. No, we're talking about meat, like sheep, but not particularly beef. In fact, according to some of the scholars, there's no actual report that he ever ate beef. I mean, I'm not too sure if at that time they had beef available in that part of Arabia, but he's not known to have eaten it. In fact, he did speak that it hardens the heart. But anyway, he particularly liked sheep, mainly the leg and shoulder. It is the master of foods in this world and the next. The Prophet said, should I ask my Lord to provide it for me daily, he would do so. But the Prophet didn't, because he was too humble. He chose to live like a slave and not a king. He would eat porridge with meat and gourds. So this is like a family of different types of food. But the predominant narrations from the Prophet is that he used to like to eat pumpkin. So not necessarily, you know, like the Halloween pumpkin, but like pumpkin. And those of you that know pumpkin, there's different types of pumpkin, and you can Google it and see the different types of pumpkin as well. So he would like to eat pumpkin. In Urdu it's called qaddu. So you'll see our scholars say qaddu sharif. Sharif, which means noble. So they will never say qaddu on its own, because they know the Prophet liked it. They will say qaddu sharif, noble pumpkin, because the Prophet liked it, so he ennobled it. Because look, Medina is called what? It's called Mukarrama. Medina Mukarrama. It's the ennobled city, because it was ennobled by the coming of the Prophet. It's Munawwara, enlightened. It was enlightened by the light of prophecy. So the Prophet ennobles things, and he ennobled this ummah. And Allah made you and me from that ummah. What did you and me do to be part of this ummah? Allahu Akbar. Allah gave us the ability to be grateful for that, and not to shy the Prophet on the Day of Judgment, that God gave us this ability to be from this nation, and we didn't live up to these ideals, outward and inward. He would eat bread with ghee. So kyo, but you need to, next time you go to Pakistan, you can get some bread and eat it with kyo, and it'll be sunnah. Sorry about making all these Asian references, sorry. From the greens, he loved endive, sweet basil, and purslane. So you can look those up, buy them if you like, if you can find them, and eat them for sunnah. You know, there's a story about the man, you know, Shaykh Hamza mentions that he didn't used to like eating pumpkin, and so he said, I don't like eating pumpkin. And they said, how can you dare say that when the Prophet used to look for it in the meal? And so then they found him, and he sat there eating pumpkin, and he's crying, and he's eating pumpkin, and crying. And they said, why are you eating pumpkin? You don't eat it. And he was like, I don't want to not like something that the Prophet liked. Yeah, and that's what it means to follow the Prophet or to love him. His etiquette in dress. So we're not going to talk about his dress particularly, but his etiquette. Well, I'm just listening from the text. He wore what he found at hand. He mostly wore white. Clothe with it your living and shroud with it your deceased, the Prophet said. He would wear a turban with a cap underneath. You know, yeah, if you want a good example of a nice turban, mashallah, you got the Sidi Osama there. You know, the Prophet's turban, he would have, it would go one way and the other way, like that, and he used to have two tails. So when he would put it on, he would have one tail coming down, and he would then wrap it, and then he would tuck it in, come down, and you know, if you meet Mashayikh, you know, we have asanid. So for example, my teacher put the imamah on me, and he said, this is how my teacher put it on me, and this is how my teacher put it on me, all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. So we still have these what are called musalsalat, ahadith musalsala, which are narrations that go directly back to the Prophet ﷺ, and so it would have two tails in the back. That's our tradition, unbroken chains. Alhamdulillah. When he wore a gown, he began with the right side and would say, "Thanks be to God who dressed me with what I may cover my private parts and decorate myself with among the people." When he would disrobe, he would do so from the left side. He would leave a special gown for Fridays. If he would wear a new garment, he would give his old one away to someone poor. Anyway, so you just open your wardrobe at home and look at the blessings that God's given you. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, God gave us those things. But we have to admire the humility of our Prophet. He would wear a waistcoat of dyed leather which had 3 silver rings. Interesting. It's like a koti, basically. He wore a thobe, a Yemeni coat, and a Yemeni shawl. Anyone ever seen a picture of Habib Umar? Yeah, you've seen Habib Umar? If you haven't, just Google Habib Umar, and how he's dressed is basically the sunnah entirely. So it's like a long thobe, which is called a qamis, which goes all the way down. Underneath they wear a lungi. The Prophet used to wear a loincloth. Do you know what that is? Basically it's like a cloth. Like ihram. See the men in ihram? And so then they wrap it like that. And they've got some leeway. So a lungi, and then a thobe, and then a long Yemeni coat, which goes all the way down to the bottom. And then he would wear a shawl on his shoulder, sometimes around his neck, sometimes over his head. And inshallah it will be extremely beneficial for you, and you can read through it inshallah ta'ala. And if you, a lot of the books specifically have been translated by different translators, so you may be reading a book, you get stuck on a section, you may want to buy the book of the original, which will then expand on that. So I think we can wrap up on that. I don't know if you guys do questions. I'm happy to take a couple of questions if you want. Anything that was confusing about what I said or anything. If not, then we can call it a night. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.
I can't thank Imam Shams enough for that talk. Inshallah, I hope everyone's... That's the Yemeni shawl he was talking about. That's the Yemeni shawl. But I hope everyone's learned a lot from that. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I had a short qasida, a short Arabic poem, which I thought would summarize the entire talk relating to the Prophet ﷺ's mannerisms. It's called Qasida Muhammadiyah, written by Imam Shafuddin Busiri. He also wrote the famous Qasida al-Burda. And I've taken a few verses from it which I thought would relate most to the event. And it basically summarizes the Prophet ﷺ, his character and his life. And if Asad doesn't mind, if he can just come join me for the chorus, please. And most of you should have heard it. Qasida al-Burda is going to be the same chorus as that. The verses are different. So if any of you do know it and want to join in, feel free. Bismillah.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد أشرف الأعراب والعجم محمد خير من يمشي على قدمه محمد باسط المعروف جامعه محمد باسط المعروف جامعه كرامي مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد تاج رسل الله قاطبة محمد صادق الأقوال والكلام محمد ثابت الميثاق حافظه محمد ثابت الميثاق حافظه محمد طيب الأخلاق والشيام مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد خير خلق الله من مطهر محمد خير رسل الله كلهم محمد دينه حق ندين به محمد دينه حق ندين به محمد مجملا حقا على عالمي مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد يوم بعث الناس شافعنا محمد يوم بعث الناس شافعنا محمد يوم بعث الناس شافعنا محمد نوره الهادي من الظلام محمد قائم لله ذو همام محمد قائم لله ذو همام محمد خاتم للرسل كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
And just finish off with dua. Please, also for Sheikh Rizwan's brother. Sheikh, please. No.
آمين الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا كريم إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. يا شافي الأمراض اشفي أمراضنا يا كريم. يا شافي الأمراض اشفي أمراضنا يا كريم. يا شافي الأمراض اشفي أمراضنا يا كريم. Ya Allah, we pray that you accept from us this gathering, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Rabbal Alameen, in the sunnah of your Prophet ﷺ, in the beauty of that sunnah, we pray that you allow us to live it outwardly and inwardly, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Rabbal Alameen, we pray that you allow us to follow in the footsteps of our beloved Prophet, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we pray that you fill our hearts with love for you, longing for you, love for your Prophet and longing for your Prophet, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we pray that you allow him to recognize us on the day of judgment, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we pray that you do not blind us on the day of judgment and we are able to find our Prophet on that day, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And we are able to follow him into paradise, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Rabbal Alameen, it was out of your karam, your generosity, it was out of your love for us, and you guided us to this religion, that you gave us the ability, the opportunity to be from the ummah of the Prophet. Ya Allah, we pray that you complete this favor upon us, and you allow us to be from the ummah of the Prophet in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. You allow us to be from the neighbors of the Prophet in paradise, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we pray that you give us homes right next to the home of the Prophet in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we pray that you allow us to see his house from the windows of our homes in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we pray that you allow us to see him walking in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. That you allow us to walk behind him in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. That you allow us to follow him into your presence in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Rabbal Alameen, we pray that you make us worthy of gazing upon your countenance in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Rabbal Alameen, you are the Lord of everything, so we ask you for everything. And that for us is gazing upon your countenance in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Rabbal Alameen, forgive us for our shortcomings, overlook our faults. You are the most generous, Ya Rabbal Alameen. We pray that out of your karam, your jood, your lutuf, your rahmah, that the love that you have for us, that you overlook our faults, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, guide our hearts, Ya Kareem. Open our hearts to the sunnah of the Prophet, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And Ya Rabbal Alameen, those that are sick or unwell from our families, for the sake of this good act, and for the sake of your beautiful 99 names, Ya Allah, give healing to the sick, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And Ya Allah, we make a special dua for Brother Zahid, Maulana Ridwan's brother, who obviously had such an awful accident. And Ya Rabbal Alameen, his family, we pray that you grant them patience, Ya Rabbal Alameen. That you grant patience to his small children, to his wife, to his mother, his father, his entire family, Ya Rabbal Alameen. You give them ease in this difficult time. And Ya Allah, we pray that you give him a speedy recovery, a complete recovery, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, make this tribulation a great good for him in this dunya and the akhirah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Protect us all from such a difficult trial and tribulation, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And Ya Rabbal Alameen, the deceased from our families, those that have passed away, our parents, elders, grandparents, whoever it may be, Ya Allah, from the entire ummah, we pray that you forgive their sins, that you make their graves gardens from the gardens of your paradise, that you make your paradise their final abode. And Ya Allah, we raise our hands for those that have nobody to raise their hands for them, Ya Rabbal Alameen. For those that have passed away, Ya Allah, anyone from the ummah of the Prophet, or from the ummah of any of your prophets, from the beginning until the end, Ya Allah, we pray for their forgiveness, and we pray that you enter them all into paradise, Ya Rabbal Alameen, Ya Akram al-Akrameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen. You made us in paradise for paradise. Ya Rabbal Alameen, complete your favor upon us, and do not allow us to suffer the ill fate of being from the people of Jahannam, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Rabbal Alameen, we pray that you allow us to witness you in this dunya, and to be with you in the akhirah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And anything that is in the hearts of your believers that are here today, anything that is in their hearts, you know their wants, you know their desires, you know their difficulties, you know them better than themselves. Ya Allah, give them what they want and make it easy for them in this dunya and the akhirah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And Ya Rabbal Alameen, lastly, we ask of you for everything that our Prophet asked you for, and we seek refuge in you from everything that our Prophet sought refuge in, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallim wa barik. Ya Allah, for barakah in their learning. Ya Allah, keep their faith intact, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Protect their faith in university, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Protect their haya, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, protect their dignity as believers, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Rabbal Alameen, allow them to learn and understand their religion, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, protect all of us, protect our children, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Protect their iman, protect the iman of their children and their children and their children. Ya Allah, don't let anybody from our offspring leave La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Ya Allah, allow us to appreciate this gift that you gave us, Ya Kareem. Ya Allah, it was your karam that you gave it to us. We didn't do anything to deserve it, but it was you that gave it to us. Complete that favor upon us and never misguide us. Never let us go astray, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Always protect us in your divine grace. Look upon us with your loving gaze, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Who do we have in this dunya except you, Ya Rabbal Alameen? Whose door do we have except you, Ya Rabbal Alameen? Which king is there that can give us anything except you? The king of all kings, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we are at your door, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we have no other door save your door. If you push us away from your door, where would we go, Ya Rabbal Alameen? Ya Allah, we are ill-mannered. We have bad actions. We are your slaves, Ya Rabbal Alameen. We are yours, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And we pray that you never move us away from the bounty and the grace that you poured upon us, Ya Rabbal Alameen, when you gave us La ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Rasulullah. وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا حبيبنا طبيب قلوبنا شفيعنا مولانا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه آمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Thank you everyone for coming. I think there's feedback forms at the end, and we've got chocolates as well for anyone who needs feedback. So, it's a little fine. But yeah, thank you for coming. There's snacks at the back of yourself, and I hope you enjoy it. And our next event is inshallah on the first week of December for those interested to keep an eye on our Facebook page. We'll confirm the date. Inshallah.